Hello Divination and welcome. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing 7 techniques for creating bold and colorful websites with Divi. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. Okay, so right now I'm in my admin dashboard. So the first thing we're going to do is to start off by creating a brand new page. So I'm going to come over here to pages and click on add new. So you can name this page anything. So I'm just going to name mine Mac 1. Click on use Divi Builder. So the option we're going to go with here is build from scratch. So I'm going to select it. And the first thing we're going to do here is to go straight into our section settings. So I'm going to come over here to the top left and click on section settings. Next, we need to add our divider style. So I'm going to come over here to design, click on dividers, and we're going to start off with the top divider. So right now it's the one that's selected. I'm going to click here on the drop down and choose the divider style that we need. And the one we're going to go with is this one right here. So I'm going to select it. Next, we're going to add a divider color. So I'm going to click on this eyedropper tool and add my color. Now, this color is going to be an RGBA value. So you need to drag this slider down so we can get access to the RGBA values. So I'm going to paste my value in here just like that. And by the way, if you want to use the colors that I'm using in this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post so that you can use those same colors. Right, next we need to come over here to our divider height and add 900 pixels. And then we're going to flip the divider vertically. Next, it's time to work on our bottom divider. So I'm going to select bottom. So I'm going to choose my divider. And this is the divider I'm going to go with. We need to come over here to our divider height and set it to 900. Next, we're going to come over here to the divider color and add our color. Again, this is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm going to add my value between these brackets right here, just like that. Next, let's add our spacing. So I'm going to come over here and add our padding. So I'm going to activate this chain so I can add my value both to the top and the bottom. And this is going to be 0. Over here on the margin, we're going to do the same thing, but this time this is going to be 50 pixels. So that's now going to be applied to the top and also to the bottom. And then finally, on the left and right padding, this needs to be set at 0. Now it's time to add our rounded corners. So I'm going to come over here to border. And making sure that we unlink this chain because we need to apply our borders to the top left and the top right. So I'm going to add my value here and it's going to be 20 pixels and 20 pixels to the right. Okay, so let's head over to the box shadows. So I'm going to come over here to box shadow and the one we're going to choose is this one right here. And we're going to start off with our box shadow vertical position and we're going to set this at -23. The blur strength needs to be 37. The spread strength needs to be -21 or 29. Next, we need to add our shadow color. So I'm going to come over here to this eyedropper tool and I'm going to paste my value between the brackets. Okay, so all these are the settings that we need for our section settings. So I'm going to go ahead now and save. Okay, so the next stage now is to add our column structure. So right now, I don't have access to add my column structure. So I'm going to come over here, click on expand settings, and then I'm going to go into my wireframe view. And then over here, I can click this plus button now and add my column structure. And the one we're going to go with here is 2 equal halves. And then I'm going to go back to my visual editor. So I'm going to close this for now because we need to go into our column 1 gradient and add some gradient colors. So I'm going to click here on the row settings, click on background. And then over here on column 1 background, I'm going to click the second tab because we need to add a gradient. Click the plus button and we're going to add our first color. So our first color here is going to be an RGBA value. So again, I'm going to paste my values between the brackets like that. And then I'm going to also add my second color by clicking here on select color. So this is also going to be an RGBA value. So I'm going to drag the slider down and then I'm going to paste my values between the brackets just like that. Now, if you want to follow along and use the same colors as I'm using in this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. Right, so the next stage now is to add our background image to column 1. So I'm going to click here on the third tab, click this plus button. I'm going to go to my media library and my image is already here in my media library. So I'm going to select it and then click upload an image. Now, if you want to use the same image, again, it's on the post. So you can always go and right click on the image and save it to your computer. Now, we want to make sure that this image here is set to fit. Next, we're going to come over here to column 2 background. So we're going to add a solid color. So I'm going to paste my value in here. Now we need to make this row full width. So in order for us to do that, I need to come over here to the design tab. click on sizing, and then click on make row full width. Next, we're going to come over here to the gutter width and select yes. And we're going to set the gutter width to 1. So this ensures that we have no spaces between these columns. And then finally, we're going to make sure that equalize column height is set to yes. Right, the next step now is to come over here to spacing, and we're going to make sure that our padding is set to 0, both on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to come over here, activate my chain and add my value. Right, so for now we're done. I'm going to go ahead now and save. And then the next thing I'm going to do is to add a divider to column 1. So I'm going to click this plus button to add my module. I'm going to search for my divider module and then select it. So here, the first thing we need to make sure that show divider is set to no. Next, we're going to come over here to the spacing settings. We're going to set a top padding of 200. And we might as well set our padding for our mobile devices. So I'm going to click this little icon here, click on the tablet tab, and then we're going to set this at 150. And then we're going to set this at 200. And then over here on the smartphone, we're going to set it at 150. So because our bottom padding needs to be 150 as well, I'm just going to activate my chain. And then on the tablet, I'm going to do the same, activate my chain as well. And then on the desktop, we're going to activate the chain because our padding needs to be applied both to the top and the bottom. Right, for now, I'm going to go ahead and save. And then we need to add a text module over here to the second column. So I'm going to click the plus button, search for my text module and select it. We're going to add our text. And then we need to add our text settings. So to do that, I'm going to click here on design. And then for the font weight, I'm going to click here on text, change this to ultra bold. We're going to make it uppercase. And the text color needs to be set to black. And the text size is going to be 250 pixels. So we might as well add our values for the mobile devices. So for the tablet, I'm going to add 200. And for the smartphone, it's going to be set at 100. Right, so the next thing we need to do now is to adjust our line height because as you can see, this is all over the place. So let's fix that. So our text line height here is going to be set at 0.75 EM. So that's looking much better already. Right, now it's time to add our margins. So I'm going to scroll down here and click on spacing. So we're going to start off with our top margin here, and this is going to be 200 pixels. For the tablet, we're going to set this at -250. So I'm going to click here on this little icon, click on my tablet tab, and then I'm going to set my margin. And then finally for the smartphone, I'm going to set this at -120. Next, we're going to set our left margin. So I'm going to come over here and our left margin is going to be -279. For the tablet and smartphone, it's going to be set at 5%. So I'm going to come over here, click on the tablet tab, add my 5%, and then come over here to the smartphone and add my 5% as well. Great. So for now, I'm going to save, and then we need to clone this twice. So I'm going to come over here on this little icon and clone this twice, just like that. So what we're going to do to the first one here is to just delete some of this text. And then on the second one, we just need the word come. And then finally, on the bottom one, we just need the word home. So now we're going to go into the second module here and change the spacing. So I'm going to click here on the module settings, click on design, spacing. And for the left margin here, we're going to set it at -360 and then save. For this one right here, I'm going to click here on my module settings. And here we're going to change the text color. So I'm going to come over here to text, click on text color. And this time my color is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm going to paste this within the brackets like that. And then I'm going to add my bottom margin of 200. So I'm going to come over here to spacing at 200. And for my left margin, I'm going to set this at -410. So the next thing I need to do here is to remove my top margin. So I'm going to delete that so that our text can come close together. And then I'm going to save, and then I'm going to do the same to the second text module here. Click on design, spacing, and remove my top margin. Right, so for now I'm going to save, and then it's time now to add our second section. So I'm going to come over here to the bottom and go into my wireframe view and then click this plus button to add our regular section. And then I'm just going to close this for now and get back to my visual editor. Right, so what we need to do here is to go into the section settings. So I'm going to come over here, click on this gear icon, So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a margin of 50 to the top and the bottom. So I'm going to click here on spacing and activate my chain. So 50 to the top and the bottom. And we also need the same for the left and right margins. For the padding, this is going to be set at 0 for the top and the bottom, and the same for the left and right padding. Now it's time to add my rounded corners. So I'm going to click here on border. And this time we're going to add the rounded corners to the bottom. So I'm going to deactivate my chain and add 20 pixels here on the left and 20 pixels here on the right. Now it's time to add our box shadow. So I'm going to come over here and select my box shadow, and it's going to be this one right here. And for our vertical position, I'm going to set this at 47. The blur strength needs to be 37, and making sure my shadow color is the same as we added on the top section. I'm going to click here on this eyedropper tool and add it between the brackets. And for now, we're going to go ahead and save. Now it's time to add our column structure. So I'm going to come over here to my wireframe view. Click this plus button here. And this time our column structure is going to be equal thirds. So I'm going to select my column structure, close this for now, and then I'm going to go back to my visual editor. Okay, so the next stage is to come over here and set our settings for our rows. So I'm going to come over here to this gear icon. Click on design, sizing. We're going to make this full width, and we're also going to activate our use custom gutter width and set our gutter width to 1. And then finally, we're going to equalize column heights. Next, we're going to come over here to our padding, and we're going to set it at 0 for the top and also the bottom. So I'm going to add my value there. So for now, I'm going to save because it's now time to add our module. So I'm going to click this plus button here and add my blurb. I'm going to select it. And then over here on image and icon, I need to set this to use an icon. So I'm going to switch that, and then I'm going to search for the icon I need to use. So for this example, I'm just going to use this mobile device. And then over here on the text, I'm just going to say phone. Right, so the next thing we need to do is to add a background gradient. So I'm going to click here on background, click the second tab, click this plus button, and I'm going to add my first color. So this color is going to be an RGBA value. So I'm just going to paste my color in here. I'm going to add my second color. And then over here on the start position, I'm going to set this at 20%. And end position, I'm also going to set this at 20%. Next, we're going to add our textured background image. So I'm going to click this little tab here, click our plus button to add our image. And I'm going to use the same image that I used on the first section. So I'm going to come over here, select my image, and then click upload an image. Now it's time to go to the icon settings. So I'm going to click here on design and choose my icon color. So I'm going to come over here on image and icon, and my icon color is going to be black. So now we need to change our icon size. And to do that, we need to click on use icon font size, and we're going to change the size to 85. Next, we're going to come over here to our text settings. We're going to change the orientation to centered, and then our text color to light, because as you can see, we can't read our text in there. Now let's adjust our titles. So I'm going to come over here and click this little brush icon. So what we're going to do here is we are going to change our text size to 46, our font weight to ultra bold, and we're also going to make this uppercase. So next is the body font weight time now. So I'm going to click here on this brush tool, and the body text size needs to be about 18 because right now we can't really read it. And then over here on the body font weight, we're going to change this to light. Right, so what we need to do next is to come over here to spacing and give this design a bit of breathing space. So on the top padding, we're going to add 50 pixels. And then for the left and right, because as you can see, our text here is way too close to the edge. So we're going to give this a padding of 50 to the left and the right and 100 to the bottom. Okay, so our design looks much better now. Right, so we're done with this design. So I'm going to go ahead now and save. So the next thing we need to do now is to add these blurbs over here to these two columns. So to save us time, I'm just going to clone this twice and then drag these into position. So I'm just going to drag it over here and then drag the third one. Okay, so what we need to do now is to go into the second one here, the one in the middle, click on the module settings, and then we're going to change the icon. So this one here is going to be a tablet. So I'm just going to scroll down here until I find a tablet icon. There we go. We're going to change the text here to tablet. Next, we're going to change our gradient color. So I'm going to come over here to background, click the gradient tab, and then this is the color that we're going to change. So I'm going to paste my color in here, and then we're going to save. Right, so over here to the final column. So I'm going to click here on the module settings, image and icon, and we're going to change our icon here. So the one we're going to use is this one right here, and then we're going to change our text here to desktop. So as we did before, we need to differentiate these backgrounds. So I'm going to come over here to background and change my gradient color. So I'm going to click here on the second color and paste my color in here, just like that. Right, so let's go ahead and save. So pretty much this is our final design. So I'm going to go ahead now and publish. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching and see you soon.